Hello Acolytes, welcome back to my channel. Finally, it's been so long. I moved and then I was in a lot of pain from moving and then I got sick. Look, this year, 2023, not been my year, but this illustration maybe turned that around a little bit. I love this illustration. I think it turned out so fantastically. So if you want to see the final version of this illustration, you got to stick around till the end of the video. But essentially, I was sort of feeling like I didn't know what I wanted to do. I essentially went to a tarot card generator and I generated a random tarot card. Then I went to like a prompt generator for some kind of creature and it generated a pack of wolves. And so the card I generated was the Judgment card. And when I was looking at sort of what the Judgment card meant, generally it refers to the sort of end times judgment, the revelation kind of judgment. But also the card has this sort of meaning of like a rightful and just end to something. Like a judgment has been passed and it was a fair and just and correct judgment. So I decided with this prompt of a pack of wolves to have it so that these wolves are essentially the judges, the jury, and they are giving a rightful end to a rabbit, because I thought that that was a very interesting image of like these big, powerful, predatory creatures, and something that is seemingly innocent, but the Judgment card implies that this was a just end to the rabbit's life, which I don't know, I thought was like really interesting and really, I don't know, I just felt like it really worked. And I also thought it would be interesting to do sort of these three wolves with three different attitudes or meanings or anything like that. So the wolf on the left is passion. It's very energetic. It's a little snappy. It's very passionate, and it really leans into the emotion, the sort of pathos. The wolf on the right is reason. She's very calm. She's very quiet. She thinks things through, she listens, that kind of thing. So she's the reason to passion. And then the wolf in the middle is balance. Balance really controls the other two wolves. She really, she keeps it so that neither of them is too forward. I wanted to make sure that none of these wolves really came across as good or evil. I think that maybe passion leans a little bit towards like the evil side, and that's not necessarily my intention. I could see though how there could be different interpretations of the art where one is good, one is bad, one is balanced, that kind of thing. But I think that the center image of balance and being perfectly symmetrical really leans into that idea, as well as the halo effect around balance. I really thought that emphasizing balance in this judgment by giving her the crown, it implies that within judgment there has to be balance in all things, that balance is close to godliness, that kind of thing. So, and obviously I just thought it would be really cool as well. I wanted to add in some like interesting gold leaf to this illustration, and so that's where I sort of used that crown, but at the same time it did have, some level of symbolic meaning. As far as the style goes, I tend to do a lot of artwork with heavy line art, and so I continued that theme throughout because I thought it would look interesting, make it illustrative, give it a lot of texture, because I feel like this piece definitely needs that texture. But in addition to that, I was also doing sort of like a style experimentation by snatching somebody else's style off the internet. Her name is Wolf Skull Jack on Twitter, and she does these really beautiful wolf illustrations with a lot of sort of dark, heavy line art and texture and like graphic colors and that kind of thing. I didn't exactly fully mimic her style, but I was looking at sort of the way that she does line art, the way that she does some of her coloring, and some of the texturing stuff that she does, because those are aspects of her art style that I really, really enjoyed. So I thought, maybe I'll try it and see how it feels, see if that's something that I would like to continue doing in my artwork. And I actually really did have a good time. It was quite time consuming. I imagine that if I did it more often, I would be better at it and I'd be able to do it faster. But because I was sort of unsure, I had to do like a few different layers of the darker line art to really capture that style. So this is sort of just my first line art layer that I'm working on, and then later on there is a second line art layer that really emphasizes the darkness and the shadows in the wolves. Because right now, the way I'm using the lines is to create form, but obviously you can create shadow with line art as well, so I had to go in and do that later as well. Something that I also had to sort of consider was the blood on the rabbit. You can see from the sketch here, and it becomes more obvious later on in the line art, and that from the puddle of blood around the rabbit, there are 3 different like rivers? There are 3 different rivers of blood that go to each of the wolves' paws. So whether you regard them as good or bad, or however you perceive them in terms of being evil or not evil, they all essentially have blood on their hands from this judgment and the judgment that they enacted on the rabbit. None of them did it without the others, which I thought was an important part of this piece to really emphasize, is that none of them are innocent and all of them have blood on their hands. And when I go in later with the coloring, I add lots of blood to all of the wolves' snouts and stuff like that to really emphasize the point that they are all in this together. Initially, I thought about leaving the blood sort of black. I really like that idea, but at the same time, I felt like there was already a lot of black in the illustration, and that the bright red of the blood would definitely pop against the other colors in the illustration, so I decided to keep it. Doing the coloring on this piece was very odd, very interesting. I knew how I wanted the values to go. I wanted the rabbit to be the lightest, almost white, the wolf on the right, Reason, to be the lightest color, Balance to be the middle, and Passion to be the darkest. But I was sort of unsure about the warm tones in the illustration. I sort of went with that right off the bat because I was like, there's going to be a lot of red in this piece, so if I make the other wolves and other colors warm, it will make it a cohesive sort of image, which does kind of work, but it also makes them look a bit friendly. So then I did Balance in like this blue tone, because I'm like, oh, well, if Reason is warm-toned and Passion is warm-toned, if Balance is cool-toned, then they'll stand out. And I don't know what happened. I don't know. They look like they are bright blue. I did not like it at all. So I did go in and change it. So essentially what I'm doing now is I did this first flat layer of shading, which I was seeing in Wolf Skull Jack's artwork. They did sort of a combination of cell and painterly shading. So I was like, okay, I'll just do my regular cell shading first with like a basic multiply layer, And I did that in all the areas that would have just sort of like general shadows. There isn't really a light source necessarily coming into the scene yet, even though it is coming into the scene from the left-hand side, as you can see based off of Reason's ears. You can see where the light is coming in. And then I added this really bright color for Passion's mouth, and at first I was like, this looks horrible, awful, terrible, bad, but eventually I do like how it turned out and how it draws your attention to Passion's mouth, even though they're very dark. So some of the line artwork that I do is difficult to see, and some of the shading I do is also difficult to see, but drawing the attention to his mouth, it really does like pull your attention towards him and define the area of his jaw and almost create a little bit of a silhouette for his head, which is definitely something that was sorely needed. So now, starting with Balance, I changed her color, obviously, to be a little bit more warm tone with the scene, but not quite as intense as it was at the beginning of the illustration. I'm going in with my line art brush again and adding a second layer of line art. And you can see I'm doing it just on one half because I'm just going to copy it across because she's perfectly symmetrical. But you can already see the difference in terms of the texture and the shading. Her fur on the right-hand side looks more soft, more fluffy, more dimensional. It definitely already, you can see a difference. And obviously when I duplicate it across, it's a lot more obvious. So I decided that I did enjoy this extra line art to add shading and stuff like that. So I did really enjoy it, and I decided I was going to do it to the others as well. It was definitely the hardest to do on Reason. Because she's such a light color, it very much stood out against her fur at first. So I had to do a couple passes at it to make sure that it looked correct. Because I don't know if it was just like, oh, it needed to be all over in order for you to see it. But yeah, I think it turned out okay, but it does definitely stand out the most on her because of her light coloring. One of the main things that I really enjoyed that it did, though, was really give like definition to their faces. I feel like it defined the sort of short hair, short groupings of hair that wolves have on their faces. They have a lot more of this like short mane-like hair on their faces. And so that second layer of the line art really added that into the illustration, and I enjoyed that quite a lot. Obviously, as well, this line art really went into the spaces that are essentially got by ambient occlusion, you know, where two things are interacting with each other. That area needs to be the darkest, so I went in quite heavily behind the ears, where the mane meets the leg, that kind of thing. Additionally, I thought about doing something with their eyes, but I think giving them all these like glowing white eyes was the correct choice because it makes them look very ethereal and godlike, which is definitely the vibe that I was going for. Like, this isn't just a regular pack of wolves, this is definitely some sort of deities, some sort of gods or monsters, something like that, where these are not just regular wolves. So giving them the glowing white eyes really adds to their otherworldliness, and that was something I wanted to keep throughout the piece. I'm just going to take a brief intermission to tell you that if you like this piece and you want to get a print, go visit my shop, afterplagueart.myshopify.com. The link is on the screen right now. It's also clickable in the description. Go there, check it out. You know, it would be great if you supported me. I would absolutely love that. And if you do end up buying something, please, please, please send me a like DM on Instagram or Twitter, or, you know, tag me. I would love, love, love to see these products that you guys are getting. Currently, they are print on demand, but if I get supported, I can bring production in-house and ensure the quality of your products, as well as giving things like fun little freebies and thank you notes. So support me so you can get free stuff in the future. Back to the video. I think that this line art makes the illustration look more graphic. Like, not graphic as in, I always have a hard time saying that. I'm not talking about graphic as in violent. I'm talking about graphic as in like a graphic illustration that you might find in a comic book. But I definitely think the one that it helped out the most in terms of definition was Passion. Because Passion previously sort of looked a little bit, it's really hard to capture that dark fur and not completely lose the line art. But by giving a second layer of shading with the dark line art, it really makes the lighter parts of their fur pop, which I really appreciated. I thought that it turned out very well. So I enjoyed that you got to see a little bit more of Passion after adding on this line art. Because again, they were sort of the most challenging one for me to draw. They had a very challenging pose, and emphasizing that dark color is also a difficulty. Of course, the jaws and the tongue still stand out quite sharply. I promise I fix it. I know it looks weird, but it also becomes less strange when the other red color is added in for sort of blood, stuff like that. It just stands out right now because it's the only bright red in the whole illustration. Originally, I was thinking about doing a bright red background, but something about it just didn't feel correct. It like didn't feel serious enough. And I was really struggling because I was like, I really want this red background. I did figure out a way how to add it in that I feel like looked good. And you'll have to tell me what you think, because it was definitely something that was frustrating me near the end. I got to like 90% complete on this illustration, and I'm like, I don't know what to do with the background. So shout out to my boyfriend for being very supportive and suggesting a whole bunch of stuff to me. He's lovely. You can already see sort of now that I've toned down that gum and jaw. And one of my favorite parts of this illustration was adding the like stringy spit between Passion's teeth. Oh, I love it. It looks so good. I think it's beautiful. I that's just got to be one of my favorite parts of this illustration. It really makes them look more feral, like they're in the act of unclenching their jaw and snapping at the others on the team. So I really love it. I really love it. Of course, also I had to do the same sort of thing with the rabbit by emphasizing that dark coloring. This was also very difficult because of the rabbit's light coloring. So it made adding in that darker color feel a little bit more like I was taking a leap, you know? But again, I think it turned out pretty well. I think that there is sort of like an odd thing about how the rabbit's legs are positioned. I was looking at a reference image of sort of like a laying down rabbit, a sleeping rabbit. But there is something odd about it. It feels like the legs are disconnected from the body. I just don't know rabbit anatomy very well. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's fine. I think it gets the idea across. So what I'm adding in right now is these like light touches of red, almost like red reflected light. And I mostly added this because I saw it in Wolf Skull Jack's illustration. This is another thing that I saw in a lot of her illustrations. And at first I was like really not feeling it. I was like, oh, I'm messing up my whole thing here. But I don't know. It kind of adds an interesting level of dimension. I don't know how I feel about it. I don't know. I would love your opinion, because for me it feels a little odd, especially on the darker of the two. The darker two wolves, rather. So I added those on sort of a different layer. I don't know. I'm not sure about it. I think overall it turned out pretty fine, so I'm not like upset about it or anything. And of course I added little shinies and stuff to their nose, and now I'm adding in these wonderful, lovely blood smears. So I used sort of just a regular painter brush in Procreate for that. And then I had to go online and buy blood splatter brushes, because I was like, well, I want like actual splatters on the illustration in the card as well. So I found this lovely set of blood splatter stamps for Procreate brushes. If I can find them, I always say this, I'll put it in the description, but I always forget to look because I'm dumb. So it was kind of difficult to do the blood on the rabbit, again, because I wanted it to look kind of dimensional. So there's like a dark part of the blood and a lighter part of the blood. And obviously the blood on the rabbit is interacting with the blood on the ground. So I feel like it made it get lost a little bit. I really do like the blood on the tips of the ears, the feet, and dripping from the eye. I find that's really fascinating. I did it on purpose because, I don't know, there was that whole saying that like, justice is blind or whatever, and I thought that was kind of cool, you know? So yeah, I don't know. I thought it was interesting to try and incorporate that. So I decided on this sort of style of background with the plain black, adding the red outside of the halo to emphasize the sort of halo of that gold, which also I really like, the like fake gold foil that I got in the illustration. The only thing about this one now that was frustrating, I added in like the snow and the texture of the snow and that kind of thing, but then I sort of lost reason. I lost passion into the black background. So I was trying to figure out a way to like re-emphasize the edges. So I have these like plant brushes. I don't know. I think I like them. This is where it became really difficult, is like, I'm not sure how to bring a passion from the background, the dark background, and a dark wolf without causing issues. Anyway, I think it turned out okay. And then of course I had to design the card. This also took me way longer than it should have, because this is not going to be the only tarot card that I ever do. I'm probably going to do some more in the future. So I needed to create a tarot card that didn't just work with this illustration, but could potentially work with a lot of different illustrations. So I mostly just went with this sort of like planty, viney theme. And I thought about doing it in gold foil as well, but I would just rather not. I think it looks better without. And obviously I have to do like this big serif text, and I added in these cute little skull guys on either side of the word, just because I thought that would be a little fun decoration element. And you know, I really like how this card turned out as well. I gave it like a papery texture. I'm probably going to keep that consistent. It did lighten up the illustration a little bit, so But also to sort of finish it off, I used some of those blood splatter brushes and added blood splatter to the card. So that is Judgment. Again, if you want to buy this as a print, it's available right now in my shop. You can get a small print for like 15 bucks, I think. So yeah, please go check out my shop, afterplagueart.myshopify.com. Link is also in the description. Also, if you like me, if you like my illustrations, subscribe and like this video and comment that you liked it, because that really helps me grow on my channel and helps me in the algorithm. Thank you. You can also follow me on all my other social media. I am Afterplague on Instagram, Threads, TikTok, Twitch. I stream on Twitch sometimes, maybe, I don't know. Subscribe with notifications on to find out when I'm streaming on Twitch. I am After_Plague on Twitter or X. I don't know what to call that. That's crazy. I don't know what's going on there. I have opinions about that. None of them are good. But now is not the time or place. I will see you guys very, very soon. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you survive this post-plague world.